All right, the Dallas Cowboys. A little bit of a tough year, obviously, but some real bad outside factors, outside as injuries, if you want to count that. However, that influenced their season. Now, would it have gone that great given the state of their defense? Probably not, anyway. But obviously, what I'm talking about, the Dak Prescott injury. As far as betting on them goes, actually, really good for me. 27-15. Still not obviously quite to the level of perfection, where I want to get, but not bad. And basically, a lot of that came down to identifying early how horrible their defense was and understanding what was causing their offense to be good, even with Andy Dalton. So, position by position, what we're looking at going to the offseason. Pretty interesting team, really. Quarterback obviously first, and Dak Prescott signing a big extension, which I'm fine with. Actually, I'm not going to roast him too much. I do think Dak Prescott is better than a lot of people give him credit for. He is in the top 10 quarterbacks pretty comfortably, and he does a lot of things really well. Now, is he still a little bit of a one-track mind in terms of progressions in the state of their offense? Yes, and he can be fooled into doing some bad things, and he will still have some bad turnovers. But actually, overall, I'm pretty impressed with him mentally as a quarterback, and I do think you can function as an offense at a really high level. I mean, top in the league level with him as your quarterback, obviously, with offensive talent around him. If they keep Andy Dalton around as a backup, definitely good with that too. He played just fine. Their success, like I said, really torpedoed by their horrible defense, especially after the first few weeks when their offense could at least keep up. Granted, it was already bad, but that really eliminated any chance of success. Now, there were times that he looked really bad too, but I should mention with the injury-wise, not just Dak Prescott, their offensive line was decimated as well, but good with Andy Dalton as a backup too. At the skill positions, Cowboys, best receivers in the league. Amari Cooper, absolutely elite. One of the best guys, top 5 guys for sure. Now, does he disappear from games? Yes, but what is the actual reason for that? Generally, it's not him. A lot of times, especially since he's joined the Cowboys, it's because of how Dak Prescott functions in the offense. Dak Prescott, like I said, really matchup heavy guy. He likes one matchup basically per game, and he'll attack that consistently and borderline constantly, and that's not always going to be Amari Cooper, and that leads to him disappearing. Now, there are plays where you can see Amari Cooper not give full effort 100%, and that does contribute to the problem, but as far as a receiver who can beat every corner in the league, Amari Cooper, maybe even number 2 or number 3 besides Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, and he is always going to be open effectively every play no matter what. Outside of, again, the ones he doesn't get effort, which do hurt him, of course. But I do think he's worth the contract, and you have an elite receiver going forward. Michael Gallup, also really good. He's a free agent, of course, and we'll see if they bring him back. Now, I think they should. A huge part of what made their offense so good at the beginning of the year and would make it go so good going forward, like I said, is giving Dak matchups to exploit, and they need Michael Gallup for that, or a player of his level, which is not hard to find, or not easy to find at all. Michael Gallup, one of the best big body receivers in the league. Reason being, he can do a lot more than that. Again, he actually creates legitimate separation. He's a lot better than a guy like Cortland Sutton or Kenny Golladay even. And this is going to be a hot take to some people, but I promise you that's the case. He actually does things that they do almost as well, not quite as well, but he does the things that they don't do infinitely better in terms of actually creating separation and moving. And actually, as an after-the-catch guy even, he's really good. So they should bring him back. They should do what they can to bring him back for sure. CeeDee Lamb absolutely hit on that pick too. Was he the best rookie receiver? No, but that's because he is competing with a really high standard of Justin Jefferson. And as far as the rest of the NFL goes, CeeDee Lamb already a top tier guy. And while he doesn't. So coming out of college, he was famed for his after the catch ability, and it did pretty clearly show that was just because he was playing the Big 12 in his rookie year, who notoriously awful college defenses in the Big 12, of course. But the other skills did translate a lot better than maybe I was expecting or other people did in terms of, again, actually creating separation, understanding NFL defenses at an early level. And it's not like he's terrible after the catch or anything. He's just, not this monster that maybe people were expecting. But even as a contested catch guy, the point is CeeDee Lamb really good. And those three, if they're all healthy and Dak Prescott stays healthy next year, I mean, you're talking about probably the best offense in the NFL, depending on the state of their offensive line, pretty comfortably. But other guys too, they even have depth here. I mean, Cedric Wilson he's at least has speed. Now, I don't love him as an actual technical player, and I do think he could be replaced fairly easily, but he is in this category of receivers who are fast enough to matter, no matter how good or bad they are, kind of like a Christian Kirk or something like that, and that's important. Noah Brown, too, they actually found something in him. Now, I actually really like him as an underneath receiver. He does like the top end speed, and that does limit his, any sort of real ceiling, but as far as a fourth guy, I mean, you're talking about somebody who is consistently open, short, near the line of scrimmage, and actually knows how to use his body to create space. So really like him as a fourth, fifth guy too. So they're really set at receiver, especially as requiring that they bring Michael Gallup back. Even if they don't, they're going to be fine. But that's a big part of it. At tight end, they don't really have anything. Blake Jarwin, people are excited about. Me, not so much. Going to the year, he's fine. He fits into these category of tight ends who can block decently and win scheme space, and an offense can function, which frankly, as far as the Cowboys go, if they keep their receivers, is all they need. But he doesn't actually do anything for himself outside of being an above-average blocker, which, sure, that's nice, but whatever. Dalton Schultz, really replaceable guy. Didn't show anything despite playing a lot of the year that maybe, count him as any meaningful part of their offense going forward. Now, is he awful? Definitely not, but same thing. They actually underutilized Blake Bell, who they signed. They should have used him more than Dalton Schultz. He's a much better receiver. Blake Bell is a legitimately good receiver in the NFL. He's been underutilized everywhere he's been. Now, he does lack some blocking skill for sure, and I think that does contribute more than people want to admit as far as keeping tight ends off the field. But Cowboys probably wrong for that one. Blake Bell, especially as their injuries kind of mounted up, probably needed him more on the field. Offensive line. So Cowboys in a really interesting spot with the offensive line going to the offseason because when healthy, of course, still super elite, but they're not going to be healthy, one. And two, the players that made them really great actually at this point, are on the downhill or kind of showing that they needed more around them to really be great. And so we'll start as the tackles, Tyron Smith and La'el Collins. So La'el Collins, of course, missed the whole year, which is a huge deal. La'el Collins is, an extremely elite tackle, one of the absolute best in the NFL, up there, maybe with the best, being Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, he's right there. He's really, really, really good. And they really missed him. La'el Collins, yeah, if he's healthy this next year, I mean, that guy's really good. Tyron Smith, too. One of the absolute best tackles in the NFL. He was injured for a lot of the year, and even when he played, that shit was clearly impacting him. If he's healthy next year, same thing. Him, I don't necessarily expect to be. But what's nice for the Cowboys, they actually found some reasonable backups. Throughout the year, what was killing them post-Dak Prescott and post these tackle duo wasn't their replacement tackles. It was their replacement interior guys. And it was their horrible defense giving up, gigantic time of possession differentials. As far as their tackles, they were actually okay. Terrence Steele, as a really late draft pick, or I believe undrafted, and Brandon Knight specifically, both show that they can actually play in the NFL. Terrence Steele does still struggle with elite rushers, but like I said, for some rookie or undrafted rookie, I'm not going to roast him too much for that. And frankly, he still performed better than a lot of consistent or players that have gotten consistent starts in the NFL. So I was impressed with him, and I think going forward they actually do something there. And Brandon Knight especially, he was not a disaster at any point he was on the field. He was legitimately good, and he should have been playing the whole year. As soon as La'el Collins went out, they tried things like Cam Irving, Cam Fleming. Cam Irving, yeah, that's the one on the Cowboys, who was terrible, who should never have been getting snaps over those two guys. But it should have been Brandon Knight, who, like I said, I think actually beyond just like good for an undrafted player, good for a backup, is a okay mediocre tackle, which is a valuable thing, especially on a team with injured starting guys. I think they're set there. An interior though, that's not so great. Zach Martin, Zach Martin is not this crazy elite Hall of Fame guard. I think that a lot of people think he is. He's really good, but he does a lot of similar things to Quentin Nelson to me, who's a player I consistently talk about. People need to chill on being this, so incredibly impactful, because they both lose at a okay clip in terms of missing their guy or getting shed. And while their highlights look really nice, and especially with Zach Martin, he moves so well down the field. I get it, and he's a really valuable player. Like I said, one of the top guards in the league, but not the best. And I'm worried about him as this superstar as far as the offensive line goes. We saw what happens when he's the only healthy one. Now, granted, that's going to happen to any NFL lineman in the league, but Zach Barton, not a super elite player, so but that's a big deal. I mean, you're not going to do better than him very easily at all. There are other guys, though. That's the real issue. Connor Williams didn't really improve this year. I was maybe hoping for a little bit more from him. Again, he was a little bit more impacted, I think, by the losses, and especially how bad their center play was. But Connor Williams, he's just a guy who moves well but is really, really weak, and that's kind of all he's ever going to be, I would suspect, at this point. Connor McGovern played a lot of the year. Now, that guy was horrible. That really, really torpedoed a lot of their offensive success, which, again, hard to do as just a guard, but he did it. He was really, really bad. And same with Tyler Biadasz, who I know people thought was a steal in the 4th round, and maybe I kind of bought into that a little bit, but actually watching him in an NFL field, really bad. And they're going to have to do something different there. They get Joe Looney back, who's hurt for a lot of the year, who actually is at least mediocre. So hopefully next year they don't have to lean on those guys, Connor McGovern, Tyler Biadasz specifically. And they can find replacements for them really easily. I don't think they will. I suspect they think the Cowboys think they're better than they are. You know, they're kind of notorious for liking their own guys. But so going to the offseason with the offense, again, they should be a top 3 unit unquestionably if they just bring everyone back and the offensive line stays even relatively healthy. But on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, absolutely garbage. And what really hurt them was they completely lack elite players or even good players. They don't have really anyone on defense who does anything that matters. Now, there are a couple players who I like a lot and borderline in that category, but the rest of them, like I said, in any other functional NFL defenses, they'll at least have people who do things to the offense to force them into either failure or delaying their success, which the Cowboys just don't do. If they don't act on a moving object, right, it's going to keep moving, and that's what ends up happening. So, position by position, defensive line, and I'll actually preface this with saying that going into next year, I do think there's a chance that, now they have to be really smart with how they use their money in the offseason, but they can get better by enough to matter pretty quickly here. So, yeah, position by position on the defensive line. On the interior, that's rough. That was horrible. They had the worst defensive interior, which is shocking in the same league as the Minnesota Vikings this last year. But yeah, they had the worst defensive interior for about the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season. The main reason, Dontari Poe. I get the impression, now obviously I don't fucking know him or anything, but he just clearly was not trying. That is almost the only explanation for how bad he was. I mean, for a guy whose reputation is pretty good, especially as a run-stopping nose tackle, to get literally blown off the ball 5 yards every play, was both incredible and shocking how awful he was. Now, once he got out, they did get a little bit better, but they do still lack players who matter. Tristan Hill, pretty, kind of a miss on that one, more than kind of. Obviously, outside of the whole personal issues or whatever's going on there, just as a player, not good. He can flash some penetration, but it's not at nearly the clip that he needs to make up for him being really bad in other areas, and that guy gets, again, blown off the ball really badly a lot. They also picked Neville Gallimore this last draft. Not impressed at all. I know he, for a while, especially as a freshman, sophomore, was a bigger deal at Oklahoma, but as an actual player in the NFL, he didn't really show me anything that I was impressed with. He at least has the strength to keep up, but the problem is his play style is a lot more as a penetrator, and he doesn't have the athleticism or really the feel for the game to make an impact in that way. And so I'm really worried about him getting snaps too. I mean, basically just have no one on the interior. Now that's the easiest place to find someone. You can find rookies who perform there really well. So I have hope for them, and that's part of what I was talking about with them getting better quickly. But as of now, on roster, effectively nothing. Antoine Woods was probably their best one. Yeah, and he wasn't even good. And then Justin Hamilton and Eli Anku both got snaps a little bit. Both guys who are on practice squads for reasons and aren't really impressive. Although Justin Hamilton, I think, could at least function as a very lower rotation guy. On the edge, though, they got super lucky. And we'll see how they press this advantage. But Alden Smith turned out to be basically, by far the best player on this defense. And is the player closest to being someone who matters, for sure. He was consistently, especially earlier in the year, beating legitimate NFL tackles and getting actual quick pressure that matters and doing things as a run defender that were borderline elite. And he's really good. And I expect that to actually continue going forward. I'm not worried about that being a flash in the pan or whatever, as long as, again, he's another player. As long as his mental stays right. They got incredibly lucky with him. DeMarcus Lawrence showed why he's not an elite pass rusher, not worth his contract. Now, I do like him, especially as a run defender. And I do think there's a ton of similarities between him and Cameron Jordan on the Saints. But he is even one step below that as an actual pass rusher. Doesn't actually create pressure very consistently at all. And combine that with the rest of his team, you can see why he looks so bad. Now, I do think he's better than that. And again, on a functional defense, he would be a lot more useful. But he's not necessarily going to do it himself. Randy Gregory, similar to Alden Smith, actually might matter. Now, he's not on the same level, but he does things that really are pretty good, especially as a pass rusher. He's less in the good tier as far as a run defender goes compared to the other guys. But that's the thing with the Cowboys. I mean, with those three at defensive end, you have elite run defense, and you have good pass rush. And if they fix the rest of it, I mean, it's there. They also gave snaps to Dorrance Armstrong, who was okay, especially, again, as a run defender. Not impressed with him as a pass rusher at all, but you don't necessarily always need every player you rotate there to be a great pass rusher, so I think he's at least useful. And Everson Griffin, who they gave snaps to me, that ended up being a mistake. Now, I think they just used him wrong, and I don't think he was really motivated, but whatever, they moved on for him, not a big deal. Also, I mentioned Tyrone Crawford, really bad player, not good, and their reliance on him, granted, it was partly due to injuries, hurt them as a defense too. On the second level, again, it's not good. They pay a lot of money to guys who don't matter. Jalen Smith doesn't do anything. He doesn't really get beat horribly very often, and he can be helpful against teams that are really sideline to sideline as far as limiting their high upside, but what he doesn't limit is their play-to-play upside. So while he'll prevent them from getting 20-yard gains, because of his speed, he won't prevent them from gaining 5 yards of play. And really, in the long term, that's not better, to be honest. You really need more from him, especially the contract he's at. Leighton Vander Esch, actually really similar. He's a little bit more of a playmaker, but he's not like a leader or anything like that. And both of them, again, kind of just mediocre whatever players in pass coverage. And the problem is, with them being first-round picks / really high contract players, they don't get enough of them at all. Now, if they had better players around them, could they be fine as linebacker core? For sure. I mean, they're fine right now, but that is kind of an issue with, again, the resources being put into them, and they really lack any other guy. I actually thought Joe Thomas played okay. Leighton Vander Esch was hurt for a lot of the year. Joe Thomas came in, and I thought he was all right as a middle linebacker for them. But, again, does he matter in any way going forward? Not really. And then the secondary. So, another, maybe the primary cause of the horrible issues. And is that going to get better going to the offseason? I actually think it could, and I don't think it would be that hard. So the first thing I'll start is Trayvon Diggs is good. I'm pretty convinced about that. Now, he wasn't great, but he actually showed that he could keep up, especially with like a player like DK Metcalf or these bigger receivers that a lot of NFL teams rely on. And that's good because those receivers, right, while they're easy to take away, you do need a corner who's good enough to do it. And once you do have one, because whatever team uses those receivers generally is too reliant on them doing hard things, you can really quickly impact an offense by having a corner who can take away those guys. And Trayvon Diggs, I think, can do that. Now, am I going to guarantee that already? No, but there's something there with him for sure. The earlier guys, though, disappointing. Jordan Lewis, Chidobe Awuzie, kind of really similar players. I actually think they're both not too bad, but they're also not too good. And both being free agents this offseason, I don't know if they're going to bring either of them back. I do think Chidobe Awuzie has shown flashes really good play, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up on another team and becomes really good really quickly. Jordan Lewis, again, also an okay slot corner, but again, you're talking about players who don't do anything necessarily proactively. So when no one does, they just end up all getting burned just over, mathematically a number of attempts. It's going to happen. The safety play, though, that was the worst. Xavier Woods, really disappointed in him. I thought he was at least okay going into the year. Did not end up happening. He was consistently bad. As a run defender, interestingly enough, I actually think he's okay, being he's a small free safety, but as a pass defender, while he theoretically has range because he's so fast, he doesn't actually exercise that on a real NFL field. And him as free safety is not going to get you good results. And I think the Cowboys at least know that now. Problem is, on roster, they don't have anything else. Darian Thompson was really bad. He got benched for a reason. And while Donovan Wilson played better. It was more just he wasn't so horribly awful than he was any level of good. So that I am a lot more concerned about as far as the secondary goes. Also, I'll mention Reggie Robinson, sorry. Wasn't super impressed with him. Didn't think he was awful. But again, kind of hard to judge him too much because, especially at that point in the Cowboys season, they had a horrible offense and a bad defense. So a little bit hard to make judgments. But yeah, I mean, if they can find just mediocre safety play and mediocre on the interior as a defense, I think they could get to a mediocre level a lot pretty quickly, which is a gigantic improvement on where they were last year. And combined with what I expect to be, again, an elite offense, could get the Cowboys to be an elite team really quickly. Now, are they going to do that? I don't necessarily expect it. Again, Cowboys shown that they'll put faith in bad players, but we'll see. They have a chance for sure.